Here's a fun fact for you. I put out my first video the same day the 737 MAX was grounded. I have since taken it down. It's a bit embarrassing in retrospect, but I knew on that day that I wanted to fly and review the MAX as soon as I could. Well, here we are 2 years later, and I'm finally doing just that. Today, I'll be flying from Nashville to Houston, and then Houston to San Francisco. That second leg, Houston to SF, will be served by the MAX. But in order to get there, I'm gonna have to fly on this pretty unremarkable Embraer E175. Now, when I originally booked this journey, both legs of the trip were nearly empty. But the week before my departure, a historic winter storm pummeled the US, and many flights were canceled. As a result, folks were rebooked onto this flight, meaning every single seat was taken. Now, it's highly unlikely that you'd catch COVID on a plane. Commercial airliners use hospital-grade HEPA filters to clean their air. But that air doesn't always start circulating until doors are closed and you're pushing back. So if you're gonna catch COVID on a plane, it'll be while you're sitting at the gate. As a result, I made a point to board as late as possible. I also made sure to double mask once at my seat, putting on this sweet 787 face mask that I actually designed myself. If you're wondering where you can get one of your own, you're in luck. I'll leave a link to them at the top of the video description. Before long, we were pushing back for Houston, and the still fresh snow made for a stunning departure. Now, I know everyone's here to see me fly the MAX, not some boring Embraer, but I'm not one to let good takeoff footage go to waste. So as we take to the skies over Nashville, let me give you the rundown on what it's actually like to book a flight on the MAX. This was something I was very curious about. Would United make it obvious during the booking process that I'd be flying on the troubled plane? The short answer is no. They don't try to hide it, the type of plane you're flying is clearly stated, but I thought that perhaps I'd get an alert when I selected the flight, or that the plane type would be highlighted in red. That simply was not the case, and it would be very easy for your average Joe to just completely miss it. That being said, I was pleasantly surprised when 1 week before my flight, I got a rather detailed email from United. Not only did it include a ton of resources about the MAX, which I'll also link in the video description, but it also gave me the option to change my flight free of charge. Obviously, I wasn't going to do that, but it's good to see that United makes it an option. Would you look at that? We're already on final into Houston. Let's go fly a MAX.
Remain seated until your roll has been called.
Here she is, today's ride. This particular aircraft, registration N37521, is a 737 MAX 9. It took to the skies for its first test flight on October 7th, 2019, a full 7 months after MAXs were grounded worldwide. And United left it in storage until just 1 week before I flew on it, which meant it was essentially a brand new plane. And you could really tell. It had an immaculate coat of paint, and I don't know about you, but the new United livery is really growing on me. Truthfully, I hated it at first, but it looks great on the MAX. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Alright, it's time to board. Let's check out what this puppy looks like on the inside. As I stepped onto the MAX, I was hit by this incredible new airplane smell that I've frankly never experienced before. Now, I was sitting all the way at the back of the bus, seat 35A, but I had to stop on my way to appreciate the MAX's gorgeous LEAP 1B engines. These engines are a big reason why the MAX is 15% more efficient than the 737 NG, but they're also a big reason why the MAX has had so much trouble. You see, the engines are so big that they alter the plane's handling characteristics, giving it a tendency to pitch up. This is what ultimately prompted Boeing to include the flawed MCAS software that led to 2 deadly crashes. Now, this video is supposed to be about the MAX experience as a whole. But United is my ride this evening, so I might as well touch upon the quirks of this specific plane. The seats in economy are of the slimline variety, no surprise there. Now, there was a time when slimline seats were absolutely reviled, but the truth is that nearly every US carrier now features a similar economy seat. And to be honest, I really don't think they're all that bad. As of this taping, only 2 airlines in the US are flying the MAX, American and United. Now, American has been skewered for featuring an extremely tight 30 inches of pitch on theirs, but United's feature a very reasonable 32 inches of pitch. The seatbacks don't have an IFE screen, but there is this holder for your tablet or phone so you can watch your favorite Kobe Explains videos. Before long, doors were closed, and shortly thereafter, the in-flight safety demonstration started, and I caught it on camera. Let me know if you hear anything out of the ordinary.
Please take a moment to look around in order to familiarize yourself with the aircraft. This Boeing 737 is equipped with 4 exit doors, 2 on each side of the aircraft.
Did you catch it? The flight attendant said Boeing 737, not 737 MAX 9. From my experience, United usually says the full airplane name during the safety demonstration, but not today. I actually had the chance to ask the captain of this flight, Captain Frank, about this after we arrived in SF. He said they do this as to not unnecessarily freak people out, which seems fair enough. For those curious though, the information card in the seat back pocket did specify the plane's exact type. The safety announcement wasn't the only thing Captain Frank and I chatted about. He actually shared a really interesting story with me. He said this was his first flight on the MAX since it was reintroduced, and his last flight came the day it was grounded. He told me he had just reached cruising altitude when news of the plane's grounding came in, and it caused quite a bit of a stir back in the cabin. The remainder of that flight must have been quite uncomfortable, if not a bit scary. While we're on topic, and as we taxi out for departure, let me tell you about what's changed on the MAX since it was ungrounded. There are really 3 key changes. 1, MCAS has been completely overhauled. Not only has the underlying code been rewritten, but it will now only activate once, and it's much easier for the pilots to disable it. Change number 2, all MAXs are now equipped with a redundant angle of attack sensor. That way, if one is faulty, MCAS won't accidentally kick in. And 3, each MAX has had its wiring redone, after the FAA found some shortcomings there. From a passenger perspective though, the MAX is unchanged, and it's honestly not that different from other 737s. The most notable change over its predecessors is the engine noise, and I was completely taken aback by just how much quieter it is than previous 737s. Here, take a listen for yourself. Before long, the cabin crew started its service, and because of COVID, it looked a bit different. They handed each passenger one of these pre-made snack bags, which included an alcohol wipe, cookies, pretzels, and a water bottle. As I chowed down, I also drank in the view outside the window. I had an excellent view of the MAX's new AT winglet, which helps provide a 1.5% efficiency gain over the previous generation 737 winglet. Right after finishing my snack, the captain turned off the fasten seatbelt sign, and it seemed as good a time as ever to check out the lav. It was a pretty standard bathroom, but I'll admit I'm a sucker for some good mood lighting, which is something Boeing does really well, much better than Airbus in my opinion. Soon enough, I was back at my seat watching some Netflix, and I did notice one shortcoming of this phone holder. I have an iPhone 10, which is a pretty normal sized phone. But this tray was much too big for it, meaning I was watching TV at an angle for most of the flight. But besides this one minor annoyance, the remainder of this flight was both very pleasant and quite uneventful. Truthfully, I didn't do much else. I just moved about the cabin to get different views out the window, I chatted up the cabin crew, shout out to James if you're watching this, and I drank in the extended sunset we were treated to traveling west. So, I guess it's recommendation time. Would I recommend, after everything that's happened over the past 2 years, that you fly the 737 MAX? The answer is yeah. Not only is the plane quieter than its predecessor, but in choosing to fly it, you're actively reducing your carbon footprint. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but Kobe, Boeing is greedy and have proven that they can't be trusted. So why would I put my faith in them now? Well, think about it from a business perspective. The MAX fiasco has sparked one of the worst periods in Boeing's history, not just affecting their public image, but also their bottom line. If the plane crashed again, it would certainly spell doom for the jet maker. There's a reason it took 2 years for the planes to return to service. Boeing has done everything in their power to ensure that a MAX does not crash again. Now, you can still be mad at Boeing for their negligent behavior. That is totally fine. But the fact of the matter is that the 737 MAX is now safe to fly. And I wouldn't hesitate to recommend my closest friends and family fly on the jet. I personally am looking forward to flying the MAX for years to come, and I hope you are as well. Now, this video was not sponsored by United in any way, but I wanted to give a huge shout out to them for making this such a pleasant experience, especially their awesome cabin and flight crews who let me check out the cockpit upon our arrival. Also, big shout out to Dan, the A&P mechanic, who sat next to me from Nashville to Houston. Cool guy. And lastly, huge shout out to my supporters on Patreon for giving me the means necessary to make this sort of review possible. If you want to help me make more reviews like this, please consider checking out the Patreon. And as always, if you learned something new today, leave a like and subscribe to keep learning. And until I see you again, don't forget to look up.